having us. If you don't know who we are by now, I don't know what I can do to help you. We are with the Friends of Israel. Tonight, Dennis and Roxanne Marshka are here with us. They're our fellow workers in the ministry. They travel South Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia, right? So keep them in your prayers as they're out every day, driving around, knocking on doors, and just thanking people for their support of our ministry. They were nice enough to come over and sit with us. We haven't seen them for a while, so it's always good to see a fellow. So they are here. As I told you last night, Carol and I were approached by Jess and Penny Pincus to begin this ministry, or to continue their ministry, really is what we're doing. And it was a step of faith for us, because up until then we had never had to raise our own support. And so this was a new position for us. It was a totally new concept for us. But we took that step last year. It was our first year. We went out and we hit the pavement and knocked on doors ourselves and went to churches and visited. And we had, from what Friends of Israel tells us, we had a good year. We were $30,000 short of our budget goal, but they said for our first time out in the field and raising some support, we did pretty well. So continue to pray for us. We have 2 more years to go to continue raising our support. And while we are in that phase of raising the support, we're also ministering as much as we can. So it's a combination of both things. So we're doing that. We do appreciate you taking us sight unseen. We had several churches in the other areas that took us on as well, and so we went to see them. And then we've also had churches that dropped us because they didn't know who we were, and they just decided that they were going to go in a different direction. But that's all in the Lord's hands. And so, continue to pray that as we go out, we will continue just to touch your hearts and see if you have a heart for the Jewish people, and that's the key. Just to give you a little background of us, we have 5 children and 2 grandchildren. 4 of our children live in New Jersey, and one of them lives in the Tampa area by us, so we have a time to see her every once in a while. I have a railroad conductor engineer as one son. He's our oldest. We have a nurse. Our daughter is next. She's a nurse. Our daughter that lives in Tampa is a pre-K teacher in a Christian school. Our 4th son is a fireman, and then our 5th son is a 911 dispatcher. So the calls come into him, and he dispatches his brother out to fight the fires and do that kind of thing. Carol's father was a firefighter, and our 4th son, his name is Harold Jr., we call him JR. From the time he could talk, he wanted to be a fireman. And most boys say that when they're 4 or 5 years old, they want to be a fireman, but he actually grew up and became one. And so I have the firefighter, and then our oldest son, all the little boys want to be a railroad engineer and drive trains. Well, he grew up to do that. So it was exciting. He actually got me on a train once and said, go ahead, just take the throttle there a little bit. And I said, okay. And one of the weirdest things about being in the train is there is no steering wheel. Think about that. There's no steering. You just jut the tracks and you're going no matter what. And so it was an experience. But that's a little bit about our private life. We have a grandson and a granddaughter. They are both 8 years old so far. They will be 9 in a couple months, and then the whole thing changes over. And then people ask me how old they are, and I have to think about it again. So they're both 8 years old, and they're up in New Jersey, and so we try to get up there whenever we can. I want to thank the government of South Carolina. This past January, when you had your little bit of ice and rain, we were coming back from New Jersey. We had visited for the Christmas and New Year's holiday, and I got to spend 13 hours on I-95 between North Carolina and Georgia. There's that little state in the middle called South Carolina, and we were on that highway for 13 hours, but we had a good time. That's what I'm supposed to say, right? We had a good time. We were there. So it was something for us to remember. We made history, yeah. I don't know if we want to make it again. That was a one and done deal. But please pick up our prayer card. They are in the back. Take it home with you. put it on the fridge right next to Terry's and we'll be in business. You'll have no mice in your house. He told me his works that way, so we can do that. And I know many of you have signed up for our magazine, Israel My Glory. This magazine is sent out over the entire world. And believe it or not, we have 20,000 Israelis in Israel, 25,000 Israelis in Israel that subscribe to our magazine. Now, they are not all saved. Some of them want to see what we're up to, which is fine. Let them read it. The gospel's in here, and so they get that. And so continue to pray for that. And again, I said, one year is free if you sign up. We had quite a few people sign up, and we really appreciate that. What I want to do tonight, if all this technology works for me, is just give you an outline of what the Friends of Israel is all about and what our ministry is as well. And so one of the first things I want you to see is that we are committed to teaching biblical truth about Israel, about the Messiah, while also fostering solidarity with the Jewish people. Now this is what we're doing tonight. We're going to communicate biblical truth about Israel. We'll look at that. And what we have here is the nation of Israel. Can everyone see that? All right, let me see if I can get this going here. All right, here it is somewhere. No, it's not working on the TV. All right, it won't work there. All right, no problem. We'll put that pointer aside. But that's the nation of Israel. You see the gray area in the middle there and the city of Jerusalem in that gray area. That is what the world calls the West Bank. And what it really is Judea and Samaria. And as believers, that's what we should call it. The media wants to call it the West Bank because that takes it away from Israel. But it's really their land, and what happened was, as you know, in 1967, they had a little 6-day war. The UN came in and had to stop the war because Israel was destroying the enemies all around them. And the UN said, no, please stop. Stop the shooting, Israel, even though they didn't start it. And so what happened was this area here was taken over by Israel, but the UN said, all right, Israel, you are in control of that area until we can come up with a plan for peace. That was in 1967. And there still is no peace plan in place because the Arabs don't want one. Amen. Israel wants peace, the Arabs do not. You may have seen this about a year or so ago now. UN Resolution 2334. Have you heard about that? Right before the election in 2016, President Obama instructed our UN ambassador to abstain from voting on this. It has come up several times in the past, and what the United States has done has vetoed it, and it does not carry. What this resolution says, it declares that all the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria, that gray area I showed you, designated as the West Bank, they are all now illegal. So all the settlements or Israeli communities that are there are considered to be illegal. It goes on to say that these communities have no legal validity. All right. Whoops, I hit the wrong button here. We'll go on there. Eastern Jerusalem and the Jewish quarter are now considered legally by the UN to be Palestinian territory. And so we have that going on in the world today. Now, love him or hate him, President Trump is all part of God's plan. Yeah. And President Trump, a few months ago, as you were well aware, declared that Jerusalem is the capital of, well, he didn't declare it, he acknowledged it. There's a difference, he acknowledged it. It always has been the capital, but it's always a sticking point with the Palestinians. So he took it off the table and said that we are going to recognize it now as the capital of Jerusalem. Amen indeed. And people were all up in arms. They said, what's going to happen over there now? All right? Now, this is what was happening before the United States recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. They were rioting over there. The Palestinians love a riot. They just love to do that. They love to throw stones. They love to instigate trouble over there. That's just what they do. They call Israel the occupier, and they are the poor Palestinians that were thrown out of their land. Well, there never was a land of Palestine. All right, the Romans threw the Jews out in 70 AD, changed the name to Palestinia after the Philistines to really rub it into the Jewish people. Over time, it became known as Palestine. But for the majority, you had Palestine Christians living there, you had Palestinian Jews living there, you had Palestinian Arabs living there, because the land was the land of Palestine. So what happened now that they changed the recognition? Well, it's the same thing. Nothing really has changed over there. All right, nothing really has changed. They're all up in arms. They're all upset. As you know, also, you may have heard President Trump took names at the UN Council, and he withheld $65 million in a payment to the UN. Now, you might say, you know, he gave them the other $65 million, because there was $130 million all involved there. But he kept back half of it. And now they're all up in arms that the poor Palestinian refugees are going to starve. They're not going to make it anymore. You know, where were they? But the leaders line their pockets with that $65 million. The leader of Hamas has a private $50 million jet that he flies around in. And so the money is going there, but it's not going to the people that need it. And if you were to go on YouTube, you can search out YouTube, you will see that a majority of the Palestinians in the Gaza area and the Golan Heights are living high on the log. They have beautiful homes, they have beautiful cars, but the press will never tell you that. Several years ago, we had an Israeli colonel come and speak to us at a conference we were at, and he said the one thing Israel doesn't do well is PR. He said the Palestinians have a much better PR department and putting that information out there. And so they will cry that they're poor, but what they're doing is they're taking that money and they're buying rockets from Iran. They're building tunnels underground that come up and they can attack Israel in a sneak attack and grab some of the guards and take them hostages. And what they do is they start these tunnels in schools, in hospitals. They start them, you know, in those places because when Israel fights back, they attacked our hospital. They attacked our schools. And so Israel, again, is looked to be frowned upon by the world community. It may take a couple thousand rockets before Israel even shoots back one. But that's not reported in the news. And so we try to let that news be out there. You can see, whoops, I keep doing that. I'll get the hang of this, don't worry. There we go. All right, there's the West Bank. You can see it a little bit clearer on that photo. The Gaza Strip is down to the bottom left of that photo there. And then you have the Golan Heights up there. Israel took over the Golan Heights several years ago in a little battle they had with Syria. And the reason they did that was because it's heights. It's called the Golan Heights for a reason. It's a mountain range there. And what the Syrians were doing was just going to the top of the mountain. They can look down over the Sea of Galilee, if you see the Sea of Galilee up there, and they can just fire their rockets and pick off things as they went along. Israel said enough is enough. They went in and they took that. Now the UN's not happy about it, but Israel's not leaving it. They have to protect themselves. They have the West Bank, and they will keep the West Bank because if they get rid of it, look how narrow the border is. And jets can fly across there. And so they have to protect that. So they hold on to that area. And the Gaza Strip was owned by Israel a while back. And if you remember, they wanted peace. And so they said, all right, we'll give you the Gaza Strip. And so they did. They even forced Israelis to move out of there. They forced them from their homes. And the Palestinians took over Gaza. They basically destroyed the place. And now they live there. And so they'll just lob missiles from there. And they don't aim the missiles. What they will do in Gaza is just shoot out this way, or shoot up this way, or shoot out this way. They don't really care if they hit anything. What they're doing is they're causing mental stress. And so that's what they want to do. And it causes mental stress on the Israelis, and then they win the war that way. That's what they're trying to do there. As you can see, this is the West Bank up close. Oops. Don't worry. There it is. This is the West Bank up close. You can see there's over 137 settlements scattered throughout the entire West Bank. Now, the next thing is, what is a settlement? All right, the media uses the word settlement because it makes it sound like the Israelis are going in and taking over the area and we're just going to settle here and do that. It's what it is a housing development. We drove over to Charleston, and off of the highway we could see they're building condos and high-rises on that highway there. It's the same thing here. They're building condos and high-rises. There are Jewish businesses there. And guess who they're employing? They're employing the Arab citizens that live in that land. There's no apartheid. They treat them all equal over there. And so you have to sort through what the press is telling you, because the press is not going to tell you anything positive about Israel. It's all going to be about the Palestinians, and that's what we're living with. Here is, okay. Today, more than 500,000 Israelis live in East Jerusalem. That's East Jerusalem. I'm standing on the top of the Mount of Olives, and we're looking over. That's the Kidron Valley that goes down. All right, it comes up to the wall, the Temple Mount there, and in the middle of it you see the Dome of Rock. And what you could ask yourself is where is the Dome of the Rock built? Well, the answer is it's built on top of the Temple Mount, correct? So if the Dome of the Rock is built on top of the Temple Mount, think it through, who was there first? Okay? Who was there first? And they'll tell you, oh, this is our land, but they built it on top of the Temple Mount, and it's called that for a reason. And so that's there, and they're all there now, according to the UN, they're there illegally. Now they have no legal right to be there. Nothing has happened with that yet, because I think when the administration changed, I think the previous administration had plans for, we won't mention her name, to come in and take over, and that would just sort of continue his rule against Israel. But the Lord had other plans, and I think he's using Donald Trump in that way to establish our relationship with Israel. Now, we do know the Bible states that all nations will eventually turn against Israel, and that means the United States as well. We all will turn against them. But right for now, we are friendly with them, and I think we should take that. And I think that's all God's prophecy. Israel's not going anywhere. All right, no matter what anyone says, it's not going to go away. And as he establishes now that it's the capital, I think God's using that to just establish his plan, and things will go forward as they go along. This is the city of Jerusalem, if you can see that up far away there. And you can see all the red lines. It's divided up into 4 quarters. You have the Arab quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Armenian quarter, and the Christian quarter, all divided up there. And so you can see how the nations of the world have gone into there and have divided even the city of Jerusalem up into portions there. And so if it was a little bit bigger, you could see it a little bit better, but that's where it is. So East Jerusalem is the old city. Everything in the old city, the Temple Mount, the Western Wall that you're all familiar with, the Mount of, all those things are now considered Palestinian property, according to the UN. And then on this slide here, you're going to see, let me know when you find Israel. Remember, Israel is the aggressor. Okay, and Israel is the aggressor. Now, the dark red are Arab countries, Muslim countries. The lighter red are just Arab countries that practice Islam as well. But you can see the Arabs say they don't have enough land. And they need that little sliver of coastland there to take over. And they want to push Israel into the sea. Now, it wouldn't matter wherever Israel was. I mean, even if it wasn't there, if it was someplace else, they would just not want Israel to be there. So when you hear them talking about, we want peace with Israel, they don't really want peace with Israel. That's why there's no peace plan. They want the land. They want all the land. And what they want to do is eliminate Israel. And who is behind that? Satan. Satan's behind that. So this is not just a war between two peoples. This is between God and Satan. And we know the outcome. We all know the outcome. Amen. Now, biblical truth about Israel. All right, this is taken from Genesis 15. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So who gave him the land? God. God, the creator of the earth, creator of the universe, gave Abram this stretch of land. Now, there is some question as to exactly what the borders of that are. Some will say it looks a little bit like this. And you can see how the small space that Israel has today. Some believe that that might be what God was talking about. Others look at a little bit along this area. The top border would be the Euphrates River. The bottom is not the Nile as the great river of Egypt, but there's another river that runs through there. And so they take all that into account. And what they did was they looked at where the ancient countries that were mentioned were at and where they were located, and they took those spots and put that in there. And so you can see that the land promised to Abram incorporated a much broader area than what Israel is even today. Now, Israel got that land granted to them by the UN in 1948. Now, Israel, if you know your map, I don't have a slide of this. I should get one up there. If you know your map of the world, you have Israel, and next to it you have Jordan, how Jordan comes out. Well, Israel and that Jordan area Israel was supposed to get all that land. That was the original proposal, that they would have the land along the shore and they would have that whole section of Jordan. The Arabs didn't like that, and they protested. So are you ready? The UN came up with a two-state solution. Now, you hear that a lot today. But in 1947, there was a two-state solution presented. And the solution was Israel would get the sliver of land on the west, and the Arabs would get Jordan. That's the two-state solution. And so what happened then? Well, the Arabs living in Israel were promised by all the surrounding countries that when Israel is granted that land, we're going to go in and we're going to wipe Israel out. And so what we want you to do is come over to us, live in our countries for a while. We will go in and attack Israel. You will get your houses back. You'll get your businesses back. You'll get everything you lost back. And it'll all be nice. Well, what happened in 1948? They attacked. And who won that war? Israel. Now those Arabs that left the country were not allowed back in. Israel said, you left us. You went to move out. And so Israel says, you cannot come back. And you might hear in the news the right of return. There's a lot of issues about the right to return. And Israel says, you have no right to return. You could have stayed with us. You could have lived here in peace with us, but you chose to leave. Now, you know what the countries around did? They refused to accept those people. Now you have a refugee problem. And you may always hear about the Palestine refugee issue. The issue was made up by the UN because the UN established a relief agency just for Palestinians. It has never done that before in the history of the UN. They have a relief agency for other refugees, and normally after one generation, they are assimilated into the countries that they live in, so the refugee problem is gone. But the Palestinians were never, or the Arabs there were never accepted into those Arab countries. And so it went from a group of about 700,000 people that left Israel. It has grown to 5 million because they have just let it go on and on. And so now it's not only the original, it's not only their children, it's not only their grandchildren, it's their great-grandchildren. They keep growing and growing, and that number gets larger and larger. And so you see we have a problem there. Now, you can go on in Genesis and says, I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan for an, how long? Everlasting possession, and I will be their God. It is their land. It is given to them by God. Amen. Now kingdoms will be judged over this. In Joel 3, 1 and 2, for behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all the nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have what? Scattered among the nations and parted my land. When the Lord returns, sets up his millennial kingdom, right before that, all the nations will come against Israel. God will bring them all into Jerusalem. The people of Israel will then cry out to God, and Jesus Christ will return, and then he will judge all those nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat. And that is the Kidron Valley. If you're wondering where that's at, that's on the western side of Jerusalem. You go down the Kidron Valley, you go up the Mount of Olives, just so you know an idea where you're at. God will, and he will judge them on how they treated Israel and how they parted the land. And so we are committed to teaching biblical truth about Israel. God gave them the land. There is another thing that we have to deal with when we talk about biblical truth, and that's a replacement theology. And in replacement theology, it says that the church has replaced Israel in God's plan. Jews are no longer God's chosen people. God does not have a specific future plan for the nation of Israel. And as was brought out this week, the cookie cutter seminaries sending out cookie cutter preachers, this is what they're teaching them. They're teaching this, and it is sad. But Paul says in Romans 1 and 2a, I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. For I am also an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God hath not cast away his people, which he foreknew. God has a future for Israel. But we are in a spiritual battle here today, and we must continue this battle, even in our churches. I should have put that up there for you. All right, Romans 11. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sin. And so God has a plan. All of Israel will be saved, and they will be saved just like you and I were. They will believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And we read that in Zechariah chapter 13. They will turn and call upon the Lord, and they will mourn as one mourns for the loss of their firstborn. And at that moment, each individual will see Christ as their Savior. And so God still has a plan for Israel. Now, according to the New Testament, the nation of Israel and the Promised Land are vital to God's establishing his restored kingdom on earth. The Bible teaches that Jesus fulfills the Davidic covenant that guarantees a descendant of David will sit on David's throne in Israel forever. Amen. All right. The Hebrew Scriptures teach that the Messiah will rule over Israel and the Gentile nations from his throne where? In Jerusalem. And there are several verses that you can go to and see that promise. And so we are committed to teaching biblical truth about Israel. We are also committed to teaching biblical truth about the Messiah. There's a movement about called Christian Palestinianism. I don't know if you heard that or not. In some, and I'm quoted there, Christian circles, the theological justification for gaining freedom from Israel's occupation is Christian Palestinian. It's a form of liberation theology that emphasizes Jesus' humanity and portrays him as the great liberator of the poor and oppressed of this world. It replaces the Jewish Messiah of the Bible with a Palestinian martyr. And so that is also what we are up against in the world today. It is a sad state of affairs. This man here, Neem Atik, is a Palestinian Anglican serving as a canon at St. George's Cathedral in Jerusalem. And this is what he has to say. Oh, I should put his picture up, shouldn't I? Now, Tim, if you ever see him on the street, you know who he is. All right, Jesus is the powerless Palestinian humiliated at a checkpoint. It seems to many of us that Jesus is on the cross again with thousands of crucified Palestinians all around him. Palestinian men, women, and children are being crucified. Palestine has become one huge Golgotha. The Israeli government crucifixion system is operating daily, and Palestine has become the place of the skull. That is his teaching about Jesus, our Messiah. And so we are fighting that. The Christian Palestinian argues against any biblical justification of a modern Israel, all right, and possession of the land, and it misrepresents the God of Scripture. Their God is no longer the covenant keeper. Their God is now the covenant breaker. Their God is not the God who has promised a grand future for the nation of Israel. Their God is one who has rejected the nation of Israel. And so we have to teach biblical truth about the Messiah as well. Now, armed with replacement theology and a new hermeneutic has been developed, other Christian theologians are championing the cause of Christian Palestinianism. They are determined to prove the nation of Israel has no modern day, no biblical right to the promised land. And they redefine Jesus' reason for coming to earth to argue against Israel's divine land grant. And so we're seeing that today more and more. They are saying that everything the Old Testament prophets said about the land and the people was spiritually fulfilled 2,000 years ago through Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. Therefore, they say Israel has no future or prophetic significance because the church is the new Israel. And so that is being taught today. And so we are fighting that. And they call this messianic fulfillment. And here's one verse they use. Remember I said they had a new hermeneutic? Let's read this one verse. It's found in Acts 1. It's verses 6 to 8. When they therefore were come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, wilt thou this time restore again the kingdom of Israel? Jesus has been crucified. He has risen again. He is about to ascend into heaven. And the disciples are asking him, is now the time for the kingdom? Remember, they were always looking for the kingdom. And Jesus says to them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons. That's why we don't pick out dates. All right? It's not for us to know that, which the Father has put in his own power. He says, but you shall receive power. After that, the Holy Ghost is come upon you, and you shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria, and unto the uttermost parts of the earth. Now, we know what this means. It wasn't time for the kingdom yet. The kingdom is coming, but now I'm going to start a new program. We know it as the church age, and that's what we're living in now. That's how we interpret this. This is how it's been interpreted for years. Not with the new hermeneutic. The new hermeneutic now says, here Jesus was telling his disciples not to place their trust nor devote their energy to end-time prophecy or to the militant Zionist ideology of the zealots. That's not what that verse means. That means he was telling them there's no future for Israel. You go out in the world and start the church, and the church will replace Israel. And so that's how they look at this verse. That's how they interpret it. And so you see, we are committed to teaching biblical truth because so much is being under attack. So we saw biblical truth about Israel, biblical truth about the Messiah, and we do that while fostering solidarity with the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism in the world today, and actually in the United States today. In 2017, there was an 86% rise in attacks on Jews and Jewish institutions. The most dangerous place for a Jewish young person is on a college campus, on a university campus. In 2017, 541 acts of vandalism, a 34% increase over 2015 occurred. And you may have remembered a couple years ago when unknown people went into Jewish cemeteries and knocked over the headstones of the Jewish people. College campuses. God hates the Jews, God hates Israel's being taught there. Cover of Time magazine, is anti-Semitism on the march again? These are all signs of anti-Semitism in the United States today. Now, the thing about this magazine here, 2000 or Time, that was written in 2002. Time magazine, 2002. All right, still relevant today. Still relevant today. You may also be aware, or not, of the BDS movement. Are you aware of that movement? Have you heard of that? All right, that's another fun one they developed. The UN is behind this as well. They are actually making a list of companies that actually do business with Israel. And what they are asking you to do is to support the international call for boycotting, divesting, and putting sanctions on Israel. They're asking companies to boycott Israeli products, to withdraw their support for Israel and Israeli international companies. So they're trying to put them out of business that way. I don't know if you have seen the little machines called SodaStream. Make your own soda at home, right? That was developed in Israel. All right, it's manufactured in Israel. If you look at the box, it's manufactured there. It's manufactured in the West Bank of Israel. So who's putting it all together? The Arabs are. But because of this boycott Israel, their sales have slumped. And they had to shut down one of the factories. Who lost their jobs? All right, the Arabs that were working there. All right, because they were boycotting Israeli products. They also want you to divest. They are asking local councils, city councils, churches, pension funds, and universities to withhold investments in Israeli companies. Now, you all have a smartphone on you. You all have a computer on you. You got to get rid of all that stuff because the technology in there was developed in Israel. All right? They don't think it all the way through sometimes. All right, but they're asking, and there are local councils. Sometimes in the paper and on the news you can see that there'll be a vote, that the city council voted that they will support Israel. They will invest in Israeli stocks and bonds and support Israeli companies because there's a strong push to get them to divest from that. Next is sanctions. They're putting pressure on governments to fulfill their what they call legal obligation by ending military trade, free trade agreements, and by expelling Israel from the UN. All right, they want Israel not to even have a voice in the UN, and from the FIFA. Anybody know what the FIFA is? All right, that's the federal, the soccer organization. All right, they play soccer. You may have seen on the news a few months ago, Israelis were in the competition for a judo competition. And one of the Israelis won the competition. He won the gold medal. He was not allowed to have the Israeli patch on his uniform. At the end of all gold medals, what song do they play? The national anthem. They would not play the Israeli national anthem. So he sat up there and he sang it while they played the international song. There have been reports, real reports of athletes actually forfeiting so that they wouldn't have to go up against an Israeli competitor. So this person, is trained just like all athletes train. They got to a certain level, and the Arab coach called his man over and said, "I need you to lose this wrestling match." And the kid said, "Why? I want to win." Now you have to lose because if you win, the next person you have to wrestle is an Israeli, is a Jew, and we don't want you to wrestle against him. And so the kid who had trained for this event had to go over and allow himself to get pinned so he would lose the match. That's what's going on against Israel today in the world. So the question is, where do you stand? We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And how do we do that? Well, like we're doing tonight. Whoops, there we go. We have meetings where we go over things like this to let you know what's really going out into the world. A lot of people don't know this in the churches. They read the newspapers, and that's what they believe. All right? They watch the evening news. They listen to this, what they hear. But it doesn't work that way. So we have to go out and do that. We also hold monthly fellowships in the Tampa area. Sorry I can't come up here on a monthly basis. But we do hold those things in Tampa. We also do Passover Seders just to teach churches, teach Christians their roots. Our roots are in the Old Testament. We all know that the wages of sin is death, right? How do we know that? How do we know that? Huh? All right, where? In the Old Testament, in the Garden of Eden, Genesis. All right, you eat the fruit and you'll die. All right, there's the wages of sin. All right, a lot of people they don't, oh, wages of sin, yeah, that's right. Where is that at? All right, so we try to teach our Jewish roots. We have Jewish roots. We try to involve you in that. We also do tours, up to Jerusalem tours, where we go to Israel. We take busloads of people over there, and it's safe. Carol has gone over. I've gone over several times. I know Dennis and Roxanne have been over. It's safe. They keep an eye on us. Their bus drivers are always in communication if anything was going on. Well, you might not go to that site today. You might go to there tomorrow. They change it around a little bit. But as I always say, money talks. And if the tourist trade were to be attacked, the Arabs would lose money as well as the Israelis. And so they sort of leave us alone. You'll see that the rockets are usually to the south of Jerusalem. They don't want to mess with that. But the threat's always there. They usually go after Israeli soldiers rather than tourists. Or at a bus stop, usually the Israeli soldiers are at bus stops, and so they're hopping the bus to get to their jobs and things like that. And so that's where they usually see that attacks at. And I'm not saying, you might not be attacked. We haven't stopped the tours in all the years that Friends of Israel has been doing. We've never canceled a tour. And so it's just an opportunity for you to go over and see the land. One of the things you realize when you're there is that you're walking everywhere, and you realize that this is what Jesus and the disciples did. I mean, we'll hop in a bus and go from one town to the other, and you realize, hey, that was about a half-hour, 45-minute ride. Jesus walked that. And what did John say? That he couldn't record everything that Jesus did? And that's what we miss out. We don't see that. But Jesus was walking, he was talking, he was teaching the disciples as they walked from site to site. And one of the nice things about it, when you land back in the United States and you're all done and you reflect on it, you're planning your next trip back. You just want to go again. There's so much to see there and so much to do. And the Bible really comes alive because as you're reading it now, you can say, oh, I've been to that city. And sometimes we read our Bible and he's in one city, we turn the page and he's in another city, and then you realize, oh, that was a 3-day walk. He didn't just, turn the page. He had to walk 3 days to get there. And so it's something you can do. We also offer baptisms in the Jordan River. I had the opportunity of baptizing some people in the Jordan. They were all believers. It was just something to say that they did, that they're baptized over there. And so you go in there and we do that. I'm standing on a ledge right there. If I take one step backwards, the water would have been up to my eyes. And you may wonder, well, how do you know that? Well, I took one step backwards. It ended up a little bit over my head, but we were there and we did that. And so we had a good time there. It's something that we offer as part of our tour. It supports the economy in Israel. And so we want to do that for them as well. As I alluded to, the Hesed Project is a 2-week missions trip that we take over to Israel. We take adults, my age, and I guess I'm an adult now. But we take them over there, and we work in a hospital over there, the Kaplan Medical Center. It's one of the largest hospitals in Israel, and it's one of the oldest hospitals in Israel. It goes back to the early 50s when the nation first started. It was there. And I always tell people, we do everything that you hate to do at home. All right, we dust. We clean windows. How many like to dust? All right, I got one duster. Talk to my wife, please. We got people coming and going on our shelves. We don't know. But dust, you mop floors, you clean toilets. You do all these little things for them. And what that does is it gives you opportunity to share the love of God with them. We are living in, you're in the middle of a nation that all the countries around them hate them. And so we go over and show them some love. We've been doing it for about 9 years now, I believe. And there you are. We're cleaning out shelving in a warehouse. There were all sorts of things that we will not even mention on those shelves as we cleaned them all out and dusted them. We were able to give blood one time when we went over there, and so that was pretty exciting to give blood in Israel. And like I said, you're mopping floors in the kitchen. You are serving food in the kitchen. You're raking leaves, and you are a little bit of touring. That's the Garden of Gethsemane there, and so you do a little bit of that. You can say, well, does it work? Does it work? Well, we went 1 year, and guys, just so you know, women have this extra sense about them. They can sense when something's wrong. And so we had a group go over, and the head of one of the departments came in, and the women in our group realized that she wasn't the same, she wasn't herself. So they asked her what was going on, and she said, well, my son just graduated high school. And it's a requirement that anyone, after they graduate high school, they enter the military. And she was concerned about her son going into the military. The men are required to serve for 3 years in the military. The women are required to serve for 2, and then they are on military reserve or call-ups until I believe the age of 35, and so they can call them up for that. And she was concerned. It was it's rough over there in the military. It's not a cake assignment. We've been in some of their barracks. Their barracks are like the metal storage containers with a door cut in it. The cots they sleep on are not comfortable. The foam mattress they get is about that thick, and it just it's not a comfortable position. She was concerned. So what the women said to her is, well, can we pray for you? Now the Israeli woman was she didn't understand that. No one had ever asked to pray for her. And she said, okay. And so they had a little prayer meeting right there for her. That woman was so happy about that she went home and told her husband. And then she came back the next day, and she invited those women, and there was one guy in the group as well, to her home for a Shabbat meal, their Friday night meal. Unheard of, that the Jewish people would have Gentiles in their home. I was privileged enough to go with them. I had to drive the van and take them there, and we got there, and they went through the whole ritual of their Shabbat meal, and during the middle of it, there was a little bit of question and answer time around the table. You know how it is when you get around the table, you start talking. And so the son who was going into the military, he spoke some English. They learned English in school. And so the father and the mother, and they invited 2 other couples over and their children, started asking questions to us. And during the course of the evening, we were able to share with them the gospel. Now, there aren't instant conversions that you would think of. I mean, the Holy Spirit's at work in her life. We've gone back every year, and they've always had a group in their home every year. And so they're hearing the gospel. They're seeing the love of Christ on display. And so we continue to do that over there. And that's why we take these projects over there. The next thing I want to talk to you about is our Gishurim project. It's building bridges, building relationships with the Jewish people. This is for young people. This is an internship that we have for people that may have just come out of college or aren't sure if they want to go to college, or they're thinking about going into ministry. They don't know what ministry they might want to go into. This is a 1-year program. We take you out to Las Vegas, Nevada, and there's a large retirement community there of Jewish believers or Jewish unbelievers. And there's a Holocaust museum out there, and they volunteer and they work there. And they just show, again, the love of Christ to Jewish people. They do it for 1 year, and they decide whether they want to stay in the ministry or it's just not for them. And we've had a couple from this group actually come on board with Friends of Israel after experiencing this. They traveled to Washington, D.C. when the JPAC, the Political Action Committee, comes for the Jewish people. They go there and participate and see what goes on. They show their support for Israel. They go to college campuses in the area. As I said, they volunteer at a Holocaust Museum library and minister to the Jewish people in that area. So if you know a young person that is just out of college or doesn't know what they want to do, and it's an opportunity for them to just get into the Word, study the Word, and study Jewish evangelism there. We also have a second tour that goes over. This is for young people. All right, this tour is, again, at the hospital. They work at the hospital. They're college age or a little above, and they go over for 3 weeks. And 2 weeks they spend at the hospital ministering to the Jewish people there. And then 1 week they take them around Israel on a whirlwind tour of all the sites. They go floating in the Dead Sea. That's an experience you all want to have. It's very unique that you float in the Dead Sea. They take them up to Masada. I take the, what's it called? Not a gondola. I take the gondola up. They actually walk up the hill. So, you know, they're young. They can do that. And so they have a good time over there. And just an opportunity for young people to serve in our program. As I said, they work at the hospital as well. One thing we also do is we provide bomb shelters for the Israeli people. We raise money for that. You can see the Friends of Israel bomb shelter. Here you are sitting in church, nice and quiet. If the siren were to go off, you would have 10 seconds to evacuate this building and get to that bomb shelter. 10 seconds. Now, there's not one in your town. Where do you go? You just don't know. Now, while you're running there and it's the middle of the day and you may be at work, all right, you have 10 seconds to get there. What's the first thing on your mind? Well, where's my wife at? Because now she has 10 seconds wherever she may be. And then you say, where are my children at? They're not with you, they're in school. They have 10 seconds to get that class into a bomb shelter. Imagine living like that every day. All right, so we help them. We provide, this is on the school grounds, and so they have it there. Notice there's no door on the shelter. The early models had a door on it, but it was very difficult for the people inside to close that door because someone else might have been trying to get in. And so they redesigned them, so there's a little side hall. As you know, Israel does have a iron dome system that locks onto the missiles, and if the missile is detected to head towards a populated area, they will launch a counter missile and destroy it in the air. But the issue is that $5,000 rocket that the Arabs shot at them is being shot down by a $30,000 missile. And so they're very cautious to use that system because of the high cost. The computer system is so technical, it can detect where the rocket is going to land. And so if the computer determines that the rocket's going to land in an open field where there's no people at, there's no harm, they will not send up a rocket to destroy it. They will just let it go. And so that's how people are living there. So our question is then, how do you support Israel? Well, there are several ways you can do that. This is a cream, a hand cream, it's called a Ahava. Have you seen it in the stores? You can buy it. Carol and I are actually 105 years old, but we use this cream daily, and it keeps our skin tight and moist. And so we use it on our hands so we don't look that way. But no, you can buy Israeli products. You know, look for labels that have the Israeli products. And I know if you have a mall down here, sometimes the malls have little kiosks, and there are Jewish people working in there. Just go up and talk to them. You know, support their thing. It's going to cost you a little bit more. Yeah, I understand that. We're all out, you know, as our brother said, he's a Walmart guy. But sometimes you got to break that. Sometimes you got to break out of that Walmart mode and spend a little bit more and get a good product there. This here is a list put out by the people who want you to boycott Israel. So you can see up in the top corner it says boycott Israel, and on this other side it says boycott USA. But these are all companies that do business with Israel. All right, so try to boycott some of them. All right, you can't go to McDonald's anymore, Pizza Hut, 7-Eleven. All right, can't drink your favorite Coke, Pepsi, whatever that might be, whatever you like there. Hershey bars are out. All right, Oreos, we got everything there. Kraft cheese. Sorry, I don't know if your camper's a Coleman camper or not, but you can't use any Cohen products. All right, so this is what Israel's up against again. They're up against this all the time. All right, they're up against this all the time. So what does the Lord tell us to do? He says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And when you pray for the peace of Jerusalem, we're praying for the Lord to return. All right, we know the Lord's going to return and call us all home in the rapture. We know that's next on the timeline, but he commands us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You see what they're living under. And we do that just by supporting them, by teaching biblical truth about Israel, teaching biblical truth to them about the Messiah. It's things they need to hear. How much time you have? 10 seconds, right? The alarm just went by? All right. 10 seconds. Go find a place. We'll let them go by for a moment. All right. Then we'll wrap this all up. All right, again, Carol and I are committed to teaching biblical truth about Israel, about the Messiah, and we like to foster solidarity with the Jewish people. And you as a congregation are helping us do that. And we truly do appreciate what you do for us. We truly do. Because without it, we can't do what we do. And so we appreciate that. And as I said last night, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first. And I know the rest of the verses, to the Gentile. But as you read through the New Testament, where did Peter go first? He went to the Jews. And then the Lord said, well, it's now time for you to go to the Gentiles. Paul always went to a synagogue first, shared the gospel with the synagogue, and when the synagogue threw him out, he said, okay, I'll preach to the Gentiles now. And then when the Jews got together, he said, fine, I'll go to the next town. And where did he go again? He went right back to the synagogue. All right, it's the pattern. And so we have, over time, as I told you the other night, the church hasn't been all that friendly to Israel. We're trying to change that. When we go over there, they see now that there are Christians who love them, who put their arm around them, who come over every year and help them. We actually helped them a few years ago pass their inspection. They were having an inspecting team come in that inspects hospitals, even around the world, this company does. And we were able to help them. We went, it was a disgusting job. We went down into the basement of the hospital. I know you don't have basements. Do you have basements here in South Carolina? No. All right. All right. We don't have them. We had them in New Jersey. We don't have them here in Florida. We don't have them either. But we went down into the bowels of the hospital, we called it, and they had cardboard boxes down there with files, hospital files and records in them. Now, you know how musty and wet cardboard can be. And we had a group of about 5, 6 people that went down there every single day and took all the files out of the boxes. And you know, they were told what the letters were, and they just put them all on racks and cleaned up the whole basement. And when the company came in, they got an A rating for the hospital. And so they were very happy with us, and they always go back and they show us that plaque when we come, what they got there. So, you know, you might not think that it makes a difference, but if you see a Jewish person, you might have a Jewish doctor, you might have a Jewish dentist, you might come in contact with a Jewish person. Just let them say, hey, I'm praying for you, praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and they'll look at you. And you say, you know, we love the same God. Another case, there was a woman at the hospital that they've been talking to, and they shared with her that, you know, we believe, she said to the gentleman that was there on the trip, she said, you believe that Jesus is the Messiah and that he came already, right? And he said, yeah, that's what we believe. She says, well, we believe that the Messiah is still coming yet. And he said, well, we believe he's coming back again. And she looked at him and says, you know what, I think that we might be believing in the same Messiah. All right? They're getting to understand what we're talking about. I can tell you story after story of even in our headquarters, people going out, and there was a Jewish rabbi, and he had a meeting with one of our people in the headquarters, and he walked into the meeting, and the Jewish rabbi had his King James Bible open up. Said, I'm glad you're here. I got a couple questions for you in the New Testament. Amen. All right? So, you know, it's the little things. It's just putting your arm around the Jewish person. Just, you know, letting them know you're there for them. Remember, the world basically hates them. All right? It's up to us as believers to love them. Yeah. And when they see the love of God, it takes time, but the Holy Spirit's working. He's working in their lives, and that's what we continue to do. Pastor?